all of a sudden I went, oh, no, I think it starts at 7.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, I'm starting the recording again. And we really haven't missed much except Summer's help there that we got. But as I said a moment ago, in our discussion board this week, it has you look at the Tatro case. And that's where I want to begin with our discussion a little bit tonight. The Tatro case is an interesting one. If you haven't had an opportunity to read it yet, take some time and do that. It's an old case, but it's a very important case in special ed circles. And it actually comes from right here in the Metroplex area. And I know not all of you live around here, but many of you do. And it comes from Irving ISD. And I'm sure Amber Tatro, if she's still alive, she's a grown-up by now, because I believe this case started back in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken. But I haven't looked up the date today. Maybe somebody can tell me that. But anyway, I think it started in the 80s. Anyway, whenever it was, it's been quite a while ago. And I'm sure that that Amber's grown up by now, or like I say, if she's still alive. She did have a lot of complicating factors. And the issue at hand was that Amber needed to be catheterized. And I don't know if any of you have been catheterized in your life. If you've had a baby or two, you may have been during that process. If you've had any kind of hospitalization or other kinds of surgeries, you may have been catheterized for one reason or another. It's an uncomfortable process, but it's not a terribly complex process. It's uncomfortable for the person who's being catheterized, but it's not terribly complex once the person who is completing the procedure is instructed on how to do it. And so the issue at hand was that Amber needed to be catheterized every day while she was at school. And the school district, Irving ISD, said, we're not going there. You'll need to have a healthcare professional come to school with Amber to take care of that. And, the family will need to provide a nurse to come to school to take care of that catheterization. And the parents said, well, we're not paying for a nurse. If you think that you need, it was 1984. Thanks. Was Rhonda, will you look that up? Thank you. So it's been a long time ago.
And then Dr. You were freezing up a little bit earlier.
Okay.
Like we could hear you say that the parents didn't want to pay for a nurse, but I didn't kind of hear what happened prior to that.
You didn't hear anything prior to that at all?
Just that it's not a, once you learn how to place a catheter, that it's not a major ordeal.
Well, the school district,
that was kind of the last thing.
Okay, the school district did not want to pay for anybody to, the school district said, we're not going to have anybody to catheterize her that's not a professional. And the family said, well, we're not going to pay for it, and it doesn't require a healthcare professional. And the district said, well, if we don't have a healthcare professional, then she can't come to school. And so the family took it to court, and it went up through the court system. And I don't think it went to, I hope you can hear me right now. I don't think it went to the Supreme Court. I think it went to the federal, the district level. I think it went to the Fifth Circuit. I think I'm cutting out, but at the level, the highest level that it advanced to, determined that it did not require a healthcare professional, that anybody could be trained to do the catheterization. And so the district failed in their effort to challenge this issue. And the parents won. And Amber was allowed to go to school, and the district had to provide that service. And they could either train a teacher or a paraprofessional or whoever was available to perform the service. But the district had to perform the service whenever it was needed at school. Can y'all hear me? Could y'all hear me? Okay. So it was a standard setting court case. And it set a precedent for years to come across the country. People have heard of the Tatro case nationwide, that that districts have to provide some of these kinds of services that do not require a medical professional. So this case brings to mind to me a situation. The connection's bad, isn't it? The connection bad?
Or I can.
I can as well.
Y'all can hear me? You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Good.
I'm getting a lot of, crunchy sounds. This brings to mind a situation that I had when I worked as the director of special ed in Hurst Euless Bedford a few years ago. We had a young man who was at our middle school, and he was certainly of the population that we've been studying this summer. He was intellectually disabled. He was physically disabled. He was in a wheelchair. He was nonverbal. He was dependent on the people around him to feed him. He was not on a G tube, a feeding tube, but he had to be spoon fed. He did not have enough motor skills to feed himself. He was not toilet trained. He was in a diaper, and so he had to be changed regularly. And he was, very dependent on others, for all of his needs. And the director of our nursing program in the district came to me and said, I don't know if you're aware or not, but this young man carries HIV. And I said, well, no, I didn't know that. And she said, well, nobody's really supposed to know it, but I thought you might want to know. I said, okay. And she said, there's been some rumor at the campus about this. And she said he was, his mother was a drug addict, and I don't know if she had full-blown AIDS or just HIV when she gave birth to him, but he was exposed to HIV through the birth process. And I think it was her drug use that had caused his disabilities as well. And so it was a very, very sad situation. And I don't think he was even in her care anymore. I think he was had been in the foster care system, and maybe was even placed. I don't remember all the details now, but it was a sad situation. And all of the result of drug use and then exposure to the AIDS virus because of drug use and so forth. And so it was brought to my attention then by one of my coordinators that there was a teacher on his campus who was aware of his HIV status And she did not think that that the paraprofessionals should be expected to change his diaper or to feed him with a spoon, where they would get close to his mouth, without knowing about his HIV status. And the problem was that the teacher knew about his HIV status. Now, I've talked about this situation with classes, my master's classes, for years since I've been at Tarleton. And the responses that I've gotten have been extremely varied. People say, well, definitely the teachers have a right to know. And then other people have said, well, no, nobody has a right to know. That's his medical right to privacy. And so people go round and round about this issue. You know, where are we on this? Does he have a right to privacy about this medical condition? Or do the people who are serving him every day have a right to know his medical condition if they are, you know, at risk of coming into contact with his bodily fluids, either through feeding him or through changing his diapers? And I won't even challenge you to answer that question. I'll just tell you the answer, okay? And the answer is nobody has a right to that information, because, well, first of all, nobody has a right to that information. And secondly, everybody should be practicing universal precautions. You know, the video that we have to watch every year at the beginning of the school year about universal precautions. That's what we should be practicing all the time anyway. And so we should never come into contact with anybody's. Okay, am I back? I hope you didn't hear me.
This meeting is being recorded.
Did you hear me curse in between? I
You
hope
just
you-
sounded like a robot a little bit. But
What'd you say? What'd you
You
say?
sounded like
I hope you didn't hear me say anything I shouldn't have said. Okay, I don't think, am I recording now or not? I can't tell if I'm recording. I think the recording may have
It
cut off.
It says yeah.
mine, it does.
Did it say I am or am not? I am recording still. Okay. So
No, it's
I am recording still? Okay. So the bottom line is everybody has a right to medical privacy. I don't want you all knowing about my medical record, and you don't want me knowing about your medical record. And this young man has a right to privacy of his medical record. And the way we keep anybody from getting exposed is to practice those universal precautions at all times. And so we don't wipe children's noses without having gloves on. We don't, and how many times have I seen a teacher reach over and just, you know, swipe at a first grader's dirty nose, or, you know, do all kinds of things that are unsanitary to intervene with a child's, you know, what they would consider a child's best interest. It happens all the time. I'm sure it used to happen more than it does now. Back when I was in my teaching days, it happened all the time. I'm sure I did it myself, because I think a lot of times I treated the children in my classrooms as if they were my own children. And how many times did I wipe my own kids' noses with my sleeve, you know, literally. And I probably would have done the same thing to some of the children in my classrooms because I felt like they were mine. And so I didn't always, I'm sure I didn't practice universal precautions with some of the kids in my classrooms. I think we've gotten a lot better at that in the last 20 years, maybe 30 years, certainly in the last couple of years since COVID has come along. But we should be very, very vigilant in practicing that with everybody. And then remembering, on the converse of that, we've all got a right to privacy as the counter side of that coin. So there was some uproar at that campus, and we had a principal on that campus at the time who, I don't think he even knew what the words special education meant. He was about as old school as they come, and didn't honor special education in any way. And he and I did a whole lot of this, but he thought that everybody that worked with the student should be informed about his HIV status. And that just wasn't going to happen, as long as I was the director of special ed. It probably happened through the grapevine. It probably happened in the teacher's lounge. It probably happened, behind closed doors in his office. But there shouldn't have been a need for that discussion if everybody is practicing universal precautions. Then there shouldn't be a need for anybody to be afraid. If you've got your gloves on when you're changing somebody, you're not going to be exposed to anything, because you're using all the precautions that you need to be using. So I think there's a question very similar. Well, I know there's a question very similar to that on your quiz this week about something to the effect of, if everybody uses good judgment, everything takes care of itself. Well, that's not the right answer. I think it's a true false question. And obviously, good judgment for you may not be good judgment for me. So using good judgment is not the right answer.
Dr. Cabot, you were frozen from the beginning when you already said your quiz was an important part.
Now she's frozen. Literally, when you said this is going to be on the quiz, you
Oh.
kind of cut out.
Can you hear me now? Okay, there's a question about that on the quiz that says something to the effect of, using good judgment is, everybody using their good judgment is enough. And it's a true false question. And obviously using your good judgment is not enough. You've got to use universal precautions. Everybody has to use universal precautions. And I haven't read every word of that chapter in the book. I don't know if it uses the term universal precautions, but that's the term we use in Texas. That's the training that we have at the beginning of the school year every year across our state. It's the required training. And so that's what we call it in our state. So I'm not sure, like I say, if the textbook uses that terminology exactly or not, but that's what we would call it. And that's what I'm calling it with you right now. And what we don't want to use is everybody using personal good judgment. Okay. We're going to use those universal precautions and a standard of precautions rather than just our own good judgment. So like I say, the Tatro case established for us what we need to do as far as our medical expertise, catheterization. There's a question on the quiz about that. And whether or not those have to be performed in schools. The question is particularly whether or not that requires medical expertise. And as I've just explained to you, and as the Tatro case explains to you, they do not require medical expertise. And so the answer, that's a true false question, and that would be a false. Let's see. There are some questions about, I got a terribly itchy nose. Y'all excuse me for just wiping and wiping. I think talking about bodily fluids is making me wipe. Let's see. we talk in this chapters, these chapters, some about seizures, and you had a couple of you had a video or two, at least one, about seizures. This is the video about the absence seizures, and there's a question about I think it lists several different types of seizures, and you've got to figure out which one is not one of the correct words for seizures. And we've got absent seizures, we've got partial, we've got generalized, and then I think there's another throwaway word in there that's not an actual word for seizures. We've got some verbiage in here about muscle tone, and what do we call it when we have low muscle tone? Anybody know what that is right off the top of your head? That's hypotonia. Hypotonia. And you've got a red herring in here of hypertonia. It's not hypertonia. It's not hypnotonia either. Hypotonia.
Is it atrophy? Or
Um,
that's something else.
it's hypotonia, hypo. Like a hypodermic needle. Hypo. But not hypno. And not hyper. Okay. A couple of questions about sensory issues with students. And, you know, that's usually our students with autism, but not exclusively. Sometimes those sensory issues are present with students who have other types of neurological disabilities. And we don't want to ever confuse those with acting out kinds of behaviors. So there's a question that kind of asks you something about whether or not those need to be considered maladaptive behavior or non-compliant behaviors. And you need to look for the answer that has something to do with, you know, no, it's a sensory difficulty as opposed to an acting out kind of a maladaptive behavior. Talking about positioning, positioning can, you know, improper positioning can complicate all kinds of things. It can complicate digestion. It can complicate weight-bearing activities. It can complicate a student's ability to participate with their peers. All of those are issues that complicate, that are complicated by poor positioning. And so we've got to work with our therapists to get all of that kind of thing right. There's a question on the quiz this week about that deals with which therapists do what. So our occupational therapists deal with fine motor, and our physical therapists deal with gross motor. Okay. OT, fine motor, PT, gross motor. And then there's another question along the lines of that that has to do with, okay, if we're teaching self-feeding, which therapist would work with a student? And who would it be? Say again, DJ? Exactly. OT. OT.
OT.
Exactly. OT would deal with self-feeding. Okay. Because they're going to work with, you know, holding the spoon, getting the spoon or the fork or whatever to the mouth. So that's going to be OT. All right. And as Summer already knows, when we did our practice test for our diagnostician exam, that's one of the questions that we work on our practice test is the difference between OT and PT. So learn that now and you won't have to remember it next year at this time. Okay, let's see. Um, there's a question about all the different kinds of well, it names some of the different kinds of tubes. The nasogastric tube, the gastroport,
Did Dr. Kemp
positioning,
forget?
pardon me? What'd you say?
You froze for a second.
Oh, did I freeze again?
We were trying to-
You were trying to
I freeze at the most inopportune moments, don't I? There's a question
Uh-oh.
about, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? No, yes, okay. There's a question about, let me find it.
think you're using
Okay, just a second. I'm looking for a question. Okay,
you think that's why it's
what'd you say?
glitching?
Can
I was
you
just
hear-
wondering if your internet connection was different today because it's glitching so much.
Well, we got a new one, but it was supposed to be better. It's supposed to be an upgrade, so maybe it's
Oh.
not. I'll have to take that up with the boss, and see what he has to say. I'm gonna try not to fuss at him tonight like I did last year at this time, so. That'll be interesting to see how, at least I won't do it on camera. How's that? There's a question that says, which of the following is not directly related to feeding? Okay. Can y'all hear me? Am I frozen again? Y'all are frozen. Oh dear.
Okay,
Is-
we heard you say not directly related to
Okay.
feeding.
Which
Not
one of the
directly
following is
related.
not directly related to feeding? I'm just gonna give you the answer to this one, okay?
Okay.
So here's our choices. Nasogastric tube, that one is related. A gastroport is related. Positioning is related. The one that's not related is the tracheostomy. The tracheostomy is not related. Okay. And that reminds me, on last week's quiz, if you put BF Skinner or anything related to BF Skinner, BF Skinner, you should have gotten it right. And I don't know why it didn't get it right for you. So I'm going back in and fixing those, okay? As my bonus. Okay,
Thank you.
okay. And I just realized that the fine and gross motor question is my bonus this week, okay? So fine and gross motor that's my bonus this week. All right. So your activity for this week is your skill that you're teaching, step-by-step skill. Any questions about that? For activity 3?
Was it just me or did anybody else like just get a robotic sentence, drawn out sentence from Dr. Kathy? Because I didn't understand what she said.
Well, I heard activity this week is a skill that you are teaching. That's all I heard.
I said, does anybody have any questions about that? Any questions? Does anybody have any questions? Anybody have any questions?
Did you say anything else? Because it went robotic a little bit.
Does anybody have any questions
you hear
about the
me?
assignment? Yeah. does
Can you hear
anybody-
me now?
I can hear you.
Okay, so- okay, we heard you say there's an activity and a skill that you are teaching. That's all we heard.
Does anybody have any
My mom is
questions?
over here on the couch laughing. I'm gonna make her go to another room. Mom, go to your room.
Shame on mom. Does anyone have any questions? Does anyone have any questions?
I don't have a question. I'm good.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, how about we end this session? Call it a night. All right? All right. I'll see you
All
later.
right.
Mwah, mwah.
Bye.
Bye.
Good seeing y'all for the first time.
Sorry,
And
DJ.
DJ, all
Huh?
the Zooms are like this, so
They're
come
not
back next
usually this
week.
bad.
No worries. I'll see y'all.
Bye.
Bye.